I used to believe that stability was the foundation of love. That if you provided a peaceful home, unwavering loyalty, and stayed out of drama, things would work out. For the longest time, that's exactly how my marriage felt: solid, quiet, and dependable. My name is Nathan. I'm 34 years old, a civil engineer by trade, and I used to think my wife Tessa and I were on the same page about life. We didn't chase thrills or big dreams. We just wanted a steady rhythm. She stayed home and managed the little things. I worked and paid the bills. It was simple, predictable, safe. Until one morning over coffee, she looked at me with the kind of calm that only comes before a storm and said she needed time to rediscover her feelings with someone else, specifically our neighbor. And that's when everything changed. Not just for her, but for me. Tessa and I met 10 years ago at a mutual friend's engagement party. She wore this burnt orange dress and had a laugh that cut through the noise like music. I wasn't even planning to stay long that night. I hated those forced social mixers. But she came up to me holding 2 glasses of wine and said, "You look like you're either planning your escape or reciting the Fibonacci sequence. Either way, you need this." That's how it started. She was the light one, the warm one, always talking to people, making spontaneous plans, and dragging me to pop-up food festivals or late-night drive-in movies. I was the steady one. I'd map out directions, check the weather, and pack snacks and extra phone chargers. It worked, or at least I thought it did. We dated for 4 years before getting married. Bought a small but cozy house in the suburbs. Nothing fancy, but it had a garden she liked and a garage I could turn into a little workshop. I figured we'd grow into it. Maybe kids down the line, maybe not. We didn't feel in a rush for anything. Life was peaceful, uneventful in the best way. She started staying home about 2 years ago. She said she wanted to try working on her art again. She used to paint before we met, but it faded into the background of life. I supported it, set up a corner of the living room as her mini studio and bought her an easel and some quality oils. For a while, she seemed content. Every day, I'd come home from work and she'd be there. Sometimes painting, sometimes napping with a book on her chest, sometimes watching documentaries. We had dinner together most nights. She always had stories. Even if they weren't about much, she filled the space. I liked that. I liked coming home to her. I never imagined she felt restless. Looking back, there were signs. Little ones, the kind that only makes sense in hindsight. She started getting dressed up too, or run errands. Lipstick for grocery trips. Wearing perfume on days she stayed home. One day I asked who she was meeting. She laughed and said, "No one. Just felt like looking nice." Is that a crime? I didn't press. Then came Dylan. He moved in next door last spring, a solo guy, mid-30s tall, lean, always wearing headphones or carrying his guitar case. The first time I met him, he was unloading old amplifiers from a van and blasting some indie band I'd never heard of. We made small talk over the fence. He seemed harmless. Tessa, though she lit up around him, she'd linger outside more, watering plants that didn't need watering, sitting on the porch, just to get fresh air, whenever Dylan happened to be out there smoking or tuning his guitar. They started waving, then talking, then laughing. She told me Dylan was interesting, that he'd traveled through Europe in a band, that he saw the world in metaphors and song lyrics. "Very different from you," she said once, absent-mindedly, while chopping vegetables. It didn't sound like an insult, but it didn't sound like a compliment either. I shrugged it off. People like her thrived on conversation. I figured she just missed human interaction after being home so much. I wasn't worried. Not yet. But then she stopped telling me things. Her phone started lying face down on the table. Notifications went unanswered when I was around. She started humming unfamiliar songs. Songs I'd later hear Dylan strumming through the wall when our windows were open. One night, I found her outside in a blanket, sitting on the patio steps, staring at the neighbor's house like she was waiting for a light to come on. That's when I started feeling it. That tight, quiet discomfort in your chest when something's off, and you can't name it yet. I didn't accuse. I didn't ask. I just watched, because some truths you don't need to hear out loud to believe. The first time I really saw it, like truly let myself acknowledge what was unfolding, was a Sunday afternoon. I had just come back from the hardware store with a box of screws and some weather stripping. The garage door needed a fix, and I figured it'd be a good weekend project. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw Tessa in the backyard, laughing. She was leaning over the fence, talking to Dylan. He had his guitar slung across his chest and a cigarette in hand. She had that familiar tilt to her head, the same one she used when she was deeply invested in a conversation. Her laugh sounded a little too loud, too light, like she was performing. Neither of them saw me right away. I didn't say anything. I just stood by the car, holding my bag of tools like an idiot, watching my wife laugh with another man in the way she hadn't laughed with me in months. When she finally turned and saw me, She waved casually. Dylan was just showing me his new pedal setup, she said, as if I cared. I smiled, a small tight-lipped thing. Cool, I said, then walked into the garage and shut the door behind me. From that day on, the encounters started stacking up. Tessa began referring to Dylan in passing like he was part of our everyday life. Dylan says that jazz is best listened to at night. He invited me to hear him practice sometime. Dylan lent me this book, something about creative clarity. You'd probably hate it. Dylan says I should loosen up when I paint, just let the brush move. I nodded each time, but something in me recoiled. It wasn't what she was saying. It was how often she was saying it, how easily his name slipped into her sentences, how her eyes wandered when she talked about him, like her mind had already drifted somewhere else. Then there was the night she came home late from a walk. She smelled like bonfire and red wine. She said she'd been at Dylan's, sitting in his backyard while he played old records on vinyl, just listening. It's nice, she said softly, to just be still with someone who gets it. I didn't ask what exactly he got. I didn't ask why she hadn't texted. I just nodded, poured myself a glass of water, and said goodnight. What else was there to say? It wasn't long before the shift became undeniable. One morning, over breakfast, she barely touched her eggs. She kept fiddling with the edge of her napkin, chewing her bottom lip. Then, in the quietest voice, she said, "Have you ever felt like you lost track of yourself?" I looked up. "What do you mean?" She hesitated. "Like you're playing a role instead of living your life, like there's a version of you somewhere out there that's more alive." It took me a moment to answer. "I guess. Sometimes, but I try not to confuse comfort with confinement." She nodded, almost disappointed, like that wasn't the answer she wanted. She got up, rinsed her plate, and didn't say much for the rest of the day. Later that week, she dropped it. The bomb. We were in the kitchen, me drying dishes, her scrolling on her phone. And out of nowhere, she said, "I think I need space." I didn't look up. What kind of space? The kind where I can think, figure myself out, away from here. Still holding the damp dish towel, I finally turned toward her. "Where exactly would you go?" She looked me straight in the eye. Dylan offered his guest room. There it was. No stutter, no shame, like it was the most natural solution in the world. She added quickly, "It's not what you think. I need clarity, time to breathe, to understand what these feelings mean. And you think moving in with the guy who's the reason you're confused is the way to find that clarity?" I asked, my voice remarkably calm. She looked away. "It's just for a month. I need to know if what I'm feeling is real, or just a fantasy." There was a long silence. She waited for a reaction. But I didn't give her one. I just said, "Okay." Because in that moment, something in me broke. But not in a way she expected. It didn't break from grief. It broke free. Tessa thought I'd fight. I thought I'd raise my voice, beg her to stay, maybe even storm over to Dylan's house and demand an explanation. That's the version of me she had in her head. A steady man, dependable, maybe a little boring, but safe. The kind of man who wouldn't know how to let go. But I didn't yell, I didn't plead. I just stood there and said, "Okay." And for a second, just a second, something flickered across her face. Doubt. Like she didn't expect me to be so agreeable. "Really?" she said, setting her phone down. "You're okay with this?" "I'm not okay with it," I replied, calmly. "But if this is what you feel you need, I'm not going to stop you." She blinked. "I thought you'd be angry." "I am," I said. "Just not the kind of angry that explodes. The kind that watches." She went quiet after that. Probably didn't know what to do with my silence. The next morning, she packed a bag. A small duffel. She said she'd only be gone a few weeks. She kissed me on the cheek like she was going on a yoga retreat and promised to call. "We can check in. Maybe even have lunch. No pressure. I need to see where my heart is." I didn't respond. I just opened the door for her and watched as she walked across the lawn to Dylan's house. She didn't even look back. That night, I sat in the kitchen for a long time. No TV, no music. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my own thoughts. I stared at the table where we'd shared so many meals, laughs, arguments, dreams, and realized it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a set that had been abandoned mid-scene. The next day, I called a real estate agent. I didn't tell anyone right away. Not even my sister Linda, who usually hears everything before I finish saying it. I wasn't ready to talk about it. Wasn't ready for the, "Are you okay?" Or the, "She doesn't know what she's doing" speeches. I just needed to move. In every sense. While Tessa was finding herself with Dylan, I cleaned out the attic, donated old clothes, packed up the storage closet. I started taking long drives after work, visiting new neighborhoods. I even toured a loft downtown that overlooked the river, a space I'd never considered before because it wasn't practical. But now, practicality was off the table. Freedom was the new currency. I began transferring money into a separate account. Quietly. No announcements. No drama. I also met with a divorce lawyer. As she cheated? He asked. Not physically, I said. But emotionally. She moved in with another man to figure out her feelings. I think that's enough. He nodded. It's enough. Weeks passed. Tessa sent the occasional text. Hope you're okay. This is harder than I thought. Can we talk soon? I didn't answer. Not out of pettiness, but because I didn't owe her clarity while she was borrowing intimacy elsewhere. She'd made her move. I was just making mine. One afternoon, I ran into Dylan in the driveway. He gave me a lazy wave and a grin like we were pals. Hey man, Tessa says hi? I nodded. That was it. No words. Just a nod. He didn't know it yet, but he wasn't the destination. He was the detour. And she'd learn that soon enough. But by then, I wouldn't be waiting. Back home, I sat in our living room, soon to be someone else's living room, and drafted a letter. No emotion. Just facts. I wrote, Tessa, I've decided not to wait for your feelings to return. I am selling the house. The paperwork is underway. By the time you come back, it won't be mine anymore. I wish you well. Nathan. I didn't send it yet, but I folded it, placed it on the kitchen table. Right under the vase of wilting flowers she'd forgotten to throw out. It was a Thursday afternoon when she came back. I'd just gotten home from finalizing the paperwork with the buyers. A young couple, newlyweds. They loved the charm of the place, the backyard garden, and the quiet neighborhood. I gave them a small smile as I handed over the keys, pretending none of it mattered to me anymore. When I pulled into the driveway, Tessa's car was already parked there. She was sitting on the porch steps with her bag beside her, staring at the door like she wasn't sure whether to knock or walk in. Her hair was a bit frizzy from the wind, and she wore the same denim jacket I'd seen her leave in. Something about it made her look smaller than usual. When she saw me, she stood up quickly. Smiled. Hey, she said, like we'd just had a normal day apart. You're home early. I nodded, walked past her, and unlocked the door. She followed me inside without asking. The house looked different now. Half the furniture gone, pictures taken down, boxes stacked in corners. Her eyes scanned the living room and widened slightly. What's going on? She asked, dropping her bag. Why is everything packed? I didn't answer right away. I just walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and leaned against the counter. Tessa stepped in after me, her voice more careful now. Nathan, what is this? I picked up the folded letter from the table and handed it to her. She read it in silence. I watched her face shift as each line settled in. You're selling the house? She finally asked, her voice breaking. Without telling me. No, I said. I'm selling my house. You left it a month ago, remember? She stared at me, stunned. I said I was coming back. And I said nothing. I replied. Because I didn't promise to wait. She sat down slowly, as if her knees couldn't carry her anymore. But I thought we'd talk. Figure things out. I thought this space, this break, was about clarity. I nodded. It was. I got mine. Her expression hardened. So that's it. You just gave up. Sold the house, saw a lawyer. What, planning to disappear? I let out a soft laugh. You disappeared first, Tessa. You left to live with another man and expected me to sit here frozen in time, hoping you'd choose me when you were done sampling alternatives. Her face flushed. It wasn't like that. No. I tilted my head. You left your marriage to chase what-ifs with a neighbor, slept in his house, ate at his table, lived his life. You traded a decade for a whim. She opened her mouth, closed it, and then tried again. It wasn't physical. I swear. We talked, we argued, and we tried to understand what this was. And I realized it wasn't love. It was projection. He's not you. She paused, eyes shining. He's chaos. You're home. I stayed silent. She reached out, barely brushing my arm. Please, Nathan, let's rebuild. This doesn't have to be the end. I looked down at her hand, then back at her. There's nothing left to rebuild. You took a sledgehammer to the foundation when you walked across that lawn. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't feel moved. Just tired. You don't mean that, she whispered. I do, I said. I meant it the moment you said you needed space, and chose him to fill it. She stood abruptly, pacing the floor. You're being cold. This isn't you. No, I said. This is exactly me. The version of me you didn't see coming. The one who knows his worth. She spun toward me, desperation slipping into her voice. Where am I supposed to go? I shrugged. I don't know. Back to Dylan, maybe. Her eyes turned sharp. He ended things last week, said it was too much for him. Said I should figure things out before dragging people into my mess. I gave a small nod. Sounds wise. Shame he figured it out before you did. She fell silent, her chest rising and falling unevenly. I could tell she was grasping for something. Anything. To reverse this. You're not even angry, she said. I admitted. But anger's temporary. This is final. Her lips trembled. I thought I had time. You did, I said quietly. And you spent it with someone else. She didn't say another word. She just walked back to the living room, looked around once more, and then picked up her bag and left. No dramatic goodbye, no last-minute apology, just silence. When the door closed, I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I wasn't mourning. I was done. After she left, the house was quiet again, but it wasn't the same kind of quiet I'd felt during that first week, when she moved in with Dylan, and I was still grasping for clarity. No, this quiet was earned. Solid. Like closing the door behind someone and finally locking it. I walked into the living room and took one last look at the boxes. The real estate agent had texted me earlier. The couple wanted to move in by the end of the week. They were excited. Hopeful. Just like we used to be. I didn't feel bitter about that. Just distant. That night, Tessa called. I watched her name flash across my screen. I didn't answer. She texted right after, "Please. Don't do this. We've built too much to walk away now." And then, 5 minutes later, "This isn't over, Nathan. You can't just erase us." I read both messages, locked my phone, and slid it under the pillow beside me, the pillow she used to sleep on. By morning, I had no intention of replying. Over the next few days, the texts kept coming. They ranged from pleading, "We can go to counseling," to angry, "So that's it. One mistake and you give up," to guilt-laced memories. "Remember our trip to Asheville? The diner with the blueberry pie." But none of it landed. Because it wasn't one mistake. It was a long list of tiny betrayals wrapped in a month-long experiment to see if I was still worth it. And apparently, I wasn't. Until Dylan didn't want her either. That's the part that stung, if I'm being honest. Not that she left, but that she only came back when Plan B failed. Like I was the backup plan. The safety net. The man you return to when the adventure ends and reality starts asking for rent. Linda came by on Saturday. I hadn't told her much. Just that the house was being sold, and that I was taking some time to figure things out. She walked through the living room slowly, looking at the packed boxes and bare walls. "Wow," she said. "You're really doing it." "Yeah," I said. "It's time." She looked at me. "You okay?" I paused, then nodded. "Better than I thought I'd be." She studied me for a second, then smiled. "Proud of you." Not many people have the spine to walk away from what's familiar. I didn't say anything. Just offered her some tea and let the silence sit. Because the truth is, familiar can be poison if it keeps you stuck. On Monday, I met with my lawyer again. Signed the final stack of papers. He asked if I wanted to pursue anything further. Spousal support, division of remaining assets. But I said no. Let her keep what she had. I wasn't interested in winning. I was interested in walking clean. On move-out day, I stood alone in the center of the empty living room. The floors echoed every footstep. The walls, once filled with art and laughter and slow Sunday mornings, were just white now. Blank. I took one last walk through the house. Ran my hand along the banister she used to lean on. Opened the pantry where she kept all her teas. Opened the coat closet where her boots had once cluttered the floor. Gone. All of it. Good. I left the keys on the counter. Closed the door behind me. Didn't look back. A week later, I saw her. At the grocery store. I was in the produce aisle, trying to decide between Honeycrisp or Fuji apples. She was 3 rows over, wearing that old gray sweater I always said made her look cozy. She noticed me before I saw her. I heard the catch in her breath. When I turned, she gave me a soft smile and a half-hearted wave. I nodded. That was it. No words, no fake small talk, just a nod. Then I turned and walked away, because nothing needed to be said. Some stories don't get rewritten. Some pages don't get turned back. And some people, when they finally see your worth, are already too late. I moved into the loft downtown, exposed brick walls, large windows, too much light in the morning and a breeze that smells like the river. I furnished it with care. Nothing extravagant, just intentional. I painted again. Turns out, I'm not bad. Turns out, I'd forgotten who I was when I wasn't keeping someone else from unraveling. Life now? Quiet. Still, but not empty. It's peaceful. Because this time, the silence isn't covering up anything. It is the truth. It's strange how quickly you can get used to peace once you stop holding space for chaos. My new place is nothing like the old one. It's smaller, yes, but it breathes easier. No more shadow memories hiding in the corners. No more reminders of a love that expired long before either of us admitted it. I wake up now with the sun hitting my face, not the weight of wondering where I stand in someone else's priorities. I brew my own coffee. Read the paper. Sometimes I walk to the bookstore a few blocks away and lose myself in pages I never had time for. I don't check my phone waiting for apologies. I don't check social media to see if she's moved on. Because I have, not with someone else, but with myself. Every now and then, someone from our old life reaches out. A mutual friend will ask if I've talked to Tessa lately. I always give the same answer. No. And I'm okay with that. From what I've heard, she's staying with her cousin across town. Dylan cut things off shortly after she moved in. Apparently, living with someone is different than flirting across the fence. She's been trying to pick up painting again. I hope she does. I really do. Some people think forgiving someone means letting them back in. I don't. I think it just means letting go of the bitterness they tried to leave in you. One evening, I found a letter in my mailbox. No return address, but I knew the handwriting before I even opened it. Tessa. It wasn't long, just a few paragraphs. She said she was sorry. That she never meant to hurt me. That she didn't realize how much I'd been holding us together until I was no longer there. She ended with, I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know that if I could go back, I would choose us again. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. Not because I planned to reread it, but because throwing it out felt too dramatic, and answering it felt unnecessary. Some things don't need closure. They just need distance. Linda visited again last weekend, brought homemade muffins and that overly detailed energy she's always had. She looked around the loft and said, You seem lighter. I smiled. I am. She glanced at the corner where I'd set up a small canvas and brushes. You're painting now? Trying to? I said. Looks good, she replied. You always had that quiet artist vibe. I laughed. Yeah. Guess I had it buried under being the dependable husband. She gave me a look. The kind that doesn't need words. The kind that says you've come a long way. I have. The truth is, I don't regret marrying Tessa. I don't regret the years we spent together, the holidays, the quiet evenings, or the jokes only we understood. Because it all taught me something I hadn't learned before, that being good to someone doesn't guarantee they'll be good to you. That loving someone hard won't stop them from drifting. And, most of all, that staying doesn't always mean strength. Sometimes, it's the leaving that saves you. Now, I don't look for love. I look for peace. I look for people who speak plainly, who don't treat loyalty like a leash or commitment like a seasonal offer. If love finds me again, it will have to meet me where I am, not where I used to be. And it'll have to knock, because I'm no longer leaving my door open in case someone who walked out decides to return. Because once upon a time, I waited to be chosen. Now I choose myself.